Back to Francis all alone. He scores! Ron Francis!
The long battle to save the Hartford Whalers in Major League sports in Connecticut is over tonight.
As today, the Whalers announced officially that they will move at the end of this season after rejecting the state's...
It started where I just felt a need to set the record straight. And I just had to put the stuff down on paper so somebody told the truth about it.
That's Jeremiah Raffini, a fan of a team that no longer exists. And like me, a man in search of truth.
I put a lot of time and energy into it. I've gotten kind of frustrated and had to step back because it took a lot out of me.
You see, Hartford, Connecticut once had a professional hockey team, the Whalers. But they were ripped from the state in 1997. And over the years, Jeremiah had heard the same neat and tidy narrative told about the team that I had. That Hartford lost the Whalers because, well, it was Hartford.
Nobody was there. Nobody showed up. They were never good. Nobody cares. You're too close to New York, too close to Boston. It was like a script, and it would just drive me nuts.
Because Jeremiah and so many others remembered it differently. The Whalers once brought the whole city together. The arena was packed, and the fans were dedicated. For Hartford, the Whalers were more than a hockey team.
It broke my heart to see them leave. It was a death in the family.
Deep down, you know, there's nothing that's going to replace it. Absolutely nothing.
But I still see the team's blue and green logo everywhere. You probably do too. Celebrities from Adam Sandler to Snoop Dogg have even been spotted wearing it.
There's almost a cult following now.
They remain more popular now than I think they ever have been before.
Everybody who was a part of the community felt a part of the team.
But after the Whalers left, the owner blamed the small market city and the fans for not supporting the team. Like most things in life, though, I found that the truth is not that simple.
The story of the Hartford Whalers is the most fascinating story in the history of North American professional sports.
A story that many feel has never been fully told. Until now. I'm Ben Baskin, and this is Lost in Sports, from Religion of Sports and PRX. I'll take on some of the biggest questions in sports, and some you never thought to ask. Every episode will explore the mysteries of the lost, the forgotten, and the disappeared. And we'll go on a quest for answers. Today, the Hartford Whalers. Movies, music, celebrities making bad choices. Crooked Media's weekly podcast, Keep It, has it all. Each week, hosts Ira Madison III, Louis Vertel, and Aida Osman are joined by comedians, actors, musicians, artists, activists, and more to discuss the latest ways pop culture and entertainment have intersected with politics and society. Expect fun guests, award show grievances, and plenty of shade. Guests have included Kristen Bell, Desus and Mero, Mandy Moore, Angela Bassett, Catherine O'Hara, and so many more. New episodes of Keep It drop every Wednesday. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. As we start to come out of COVID, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety re-engaging in public life. If you're feeling out of sorts or your relationships are suffering, that could be a sign you should talk to somebody. Therapy can help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers secure video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. Plus, online therapy is convenient and more affordable than in-person therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great matches, so it's easy and free to change counselors if you need a better fit. Lost in Sports is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy, and our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lostinsports. That's better, HELP.com/lostinsports.
Motor racing fans, start your engines. This Sunday, race day is back when the drivers return to Indy. To celebrate, DraftKings is offering a free-to-play racing contest. So download the DraftKings app now and use code LOSTINSPORTS during sign-up to enter the huge motor racing contest with $1,000 up for grabs. Best part is the contest is free to enter. That's code LOSTINSPORTS to enter the $1,000 contest, only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details.
The way Jeremiah remembers it, the Whalers were more like a family than a hockey team. When he was growing up, he says the team actually helped his grandmother find a new purpose in life after she lost her husband.
The Whalers kind of filled the void where my grandfather used to be, and he died so young that I never met him, so the Whalers were like a family member.
She poured her love, time, and energy into them, bringing meals to players, and even taking bus trips to support the team on the road. So a few years back, Jeremiah started a blog about the team. At first, it was just a labor of love, an ode to his grandmother, filled with memories of childhood. He wanted to capture how much the team meant to the city. But soon, the blog became something else entirely.
And I just started digging through sources and old newspaper clippings and archives. And I just found this narrative it didn't resemble anything from any side. It wasn't what any of the owners said. It wasn't the official line from the league.
Jeremiah began to piece together a very different story than the one often repeated. The Whalers were once thriving, just like he had remembered. But Jeremiah concluded that the team's second owner, Richard Gordon, a man who claimed to love Hartford, had destroyed them, piece by piece, and set the team on a course for imminent relocation. But why? Jeremiah even wondered if Gordon had done it on purpose. Gordon has never explained himself, never done an interview on the topic, so Jeremiah still has unanswered questions for him.
How he got from being this guy who was buying a team, not because he liked hockey, but because he loved Hartford, to just driving it off a cliff. I've never been able to get a satisfactory answer to that.
Jeremiah has a day job as a chef for a soup kitchen, so he didn't have the time to make endless calls and chase down leads. So I told him, one investigator to the next, that I'd take up the mantle. First, I needed to learn more about Hartford itself and how the Whalers ended up there.
The capital city of Hartford, the insurance capital of the United States, the home of such companies as Aetna Life and Casualty, the Travelers, the Hartford...
Yep, the insurance capital of the United States, which might be the most boring thing I've ever said out loud. I grew up in Connecticut, about an hour outside Hartford, but I never went to the city, because it's not really a city you go to, unless you work there.
The city has always been known as being what they call a 9-to-5 city. The common joke is that the sidewalks get rolled up at 6 p.m.
Hartford is kind of a sad sack city. Most people see it as kind of a joke.
This city that's basically just a urine stop between Boston and New York.
And into this urine stop of a city came a dreamer named Howard Baldwin.
This was the guy who somehow made it all work with bubblegum and baling wire at the very beginning.
That's Christopher Price. He's a Boston Globe writer who's been working on a book about the team.
Howard Baldwin really is like Harold Hill in The Music Man, who came to town and just really in a lot of ways through sheer force of will was able to manifest a hockey team.
Baldwin founded the Whalers and is still talked about by fans with reverence, described like a legend of folklore, a quixotic man who fought for Hartford, tilting at windmills until they eventually toppled.
If there's something you have a passion for and you really want to try it. More people need to follow their dreams.
That, of course, is Howard Baldwin. In 1971, he found a few business partners and bought a team in the upstart World Hockey Association, a new league that was looking to compete with the NHL.
I felt this just seemed right, and most people would have, and did, say you're nuts. But for me, I said, why couldn't I?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, a moment that we've all been waiting for, your New England Whalers!
Howard's team, the New England Whalers, actually started in Boston. But after one season, Howard realized the team couldn't compete with the NHL's Bruins. Then one day, he was reading a newspaper, and he came upon an article about a new arena being built in Hartford.
So I said, hey, let's give it a shot. I called the building manager. I said, be interested in talking to you at a place to play. And he said, come on down.
What did you know, if anything, about Hartford?
Nothing.
Not many do. In the 70s, Hartford was struggling. The city and its residents had little to be proud of. But Howard saw something else. In Hartford, he found a city of like-minded dreamers. People who built an arena without a tenant, and now were eager to find a team to fill it.
Part of the reason why the team was there is to revitalize that city and make it an attractive city to go to.
And many of the city's insurance companies bought in. They created a coalition of 16 community partners that helped Howard finance the team.
This was a community asset and was run as a community asset. It was a family enterprise.
In 1979, the NHL voted to allow 4 teams from the WHA to join their league, including Howard's Whalers. And with a new league came a new name.
Up next on Sports Channel, it's Hartford Whalers hockey.
And a new logo, with a green W underneath a blue whale's tail. And hidden in the negative space between the two, an H for Hartford.
It's just one of the best logos I've ever seen.
That's Donna Elkinson. She was born and raised in Connecticut, and when the Whalers joined the NHL, she was hired to market the team and embed them into the heart of Hartford. And it worked.
It was really like an extended family. Everybody knew who the Hartford Whalers were. The players would get stopped all the time.
The players became part of the community, so you would run into them just doing normal everyday stuff.
That's Mark Anderson. He was in grade school in Hartford at this time, and he says this is why he fell in love with the Whalers.
You would see them at the grocery store, or you would see them at the drugstore. They were a member of the community. That's the connection. They were us.
At first, the Whalers didn't win very much, but that didn't matter.
What the Whalers meant was we had our own identity. We were a big league city, simple and plain.
In the NHL, the team was an underdog, just like the city they called home. But the Whalers embraced being different. Some might even say a bit cheesy. Their mascot was a smiling whale named Pucky, and their arena was in the middle of a shopping mall.
The Bruins fans and Rangers fans would be dismissive. They would be chanting, "You play at a shopping mall, let's go shopping."
That's Bob Muldoon, another diehard Whalers fan.
And then the Whalers had the beloved song, Brass Bonanza Plays Again. Dun, 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 dun.
Brass Bonanza. Nothing captures the Whalers' unique charm more than that song. They played it every time they scored a goal, and after every win.
Any true Whaler fan, it spiked your adrenaline.
Just gives you goosebumps.
Hockey is a sport of fistfights and missing teeth. The idea of playing a song, let alone this song, was unheard of. Other teams made fun of them for it. But for Whalers fans,
it took on a deeper meaning. It was our anthem.
The Whalers weren't just a team that played in Hartford. They were Hartford. And unlike teams in bigger markets, where after games players could disappear into the city, in Hartford, everyone went to Chuck's Steakhouse, located right in the shopping mall. For Bob Muldoon, it was the same tradition after every game.
So the fans would wait for the players to come. Slowly they'd start filtering in. The buzz would go, "Ronnie's coming, Ronnie's coming." And then all the fans would say, "Great game, Ronnie," and pat him on the back.
Ronnie would be Ron Francis, the Whalers' first-round draft pick in 1981, and a future Hall of Famer.
The hockey gods were looking after us. No team has ever had a more brilliant draft choice than that one.
For Whalers fans, Ron Francis was more than just a great hockey player. He was a superstar.
Out of the heavens, Ron Francis!
He was good-looking and affable, and he loved Hartford, played on the Summer League softball team, sent birthday cards to kids in the hospital. And Hartford loved him right back.
He became known as Ronnie Franchise. He was right out of Central Casting, Golden Boy.
And in the mid-'80s, with Ron Francis leading the way, the Hartford Whalers finally started to win. And the city began to thrive.
The city was absolutely electric.
The Whalers helped draw 15,000 people to downtown Hartford on a regular basis.
The stores were packed in that mall, bars, restaurants. Everything seemed to explode. It was like sitting on the head of a rocket.
By '85, the Whalers were the hottest show in town. Hartford was no longer just known for its insurance.
I think it was just destined to be that way because you had a whole region rallying around a sports franchise.
For Howard Baldwin, this was everything he had dreamed.
It was a community's team. They embraced the community, and the community embraced the players. It was a love affair.
The Whalers were the smallest market team in all of sports, but they were selling out nearly every game. In fact, Howard says they had the third highest gross gate in the entire NHL. And in 1986, the Whalers made the playoffs and even won their first-round matchup in a 3-game sweep of the top-seeded team. In Hartford, this time was known as Whaler Mania.
The city was electrified. It just captured everybody. It was really one of those Cinderella 3 or 4 months.
But the Whalers lost their second-round matchup in heartbreaking fashion, in overtime Game 7. But still, for possibly the first and only time in sports history, the city threw the team a parade for winning one playoff series.
The city was just absolutely alive.
Fans line the streets of Hartford while the playoffs are still going to throw the team a parade. It's just insane.
Yet another thing that we got absolutely ridiculed about.
That just showed you the love affair that the fans had with the team, and there was that connection that I don't think you can buy.
The Whalers were an overwhelming success, and Boston Globe writer Christopher Price says they were seemingly destined for more.
The feeling that I had was, this is just a precursor to bigger and better things. This is just the beginning.
But just about 10 years later came the end.
I couldn't believe it could unravel like that, and yet it did.
Odoo is a suite of business apps, but what does that really mean? You're on your computer, maybe in your PJs, maybe not. You have a tab open with a dashboard of applications, one for every department in your company. There's manufacturing, accounting, website, purchase, and more. You click on the CRM app and reach out to new opportunities. Then you click on the inventory app to make sure your stock levels are good, before clicking on the sales app to send a quote to a customer. How many tabs do you have open? Just one. Odoo makes things simple. Go to odoo.com/sports to start a free trial. That's odoo.com/sports. Lost in Sports is brought to you by Progressive. Are you thinking more about how to tighten up your budget these days? Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed in 2020. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. In 1987, coming off the height of Whaler Mania, Howard remembers the community partners that financed the Whalers telling him that they had done what they had set out to do: revitalize Hartford. They told him,
"Look, we've done our civic duty. The team is doing well. It's sustaining itself. It's making money. Now's the perfect time to sell." So my mandate was to get the highest price that I could get.
Howard warned his partners against selling, especially not to an individual owner.
I didn't win that battle, by the way. They wanted to sell, and that was that.
The Whalers had been pretty much run by the community in Hartford. Decisions were made based on the fans' connection with the team. But after a then NHL record sale price of $31 million, the Whalers ended up in the hands of Richard Gordon, a wealthy businessman and real estate tycoon.
When it was sold, that franchise was in as good a position with as good a support and as good a market as any team in the league.
So what went wrong? Well, remember, Richard Gordon is the man that blogger Jeremiah Ruffini has questions for. The man he thought may have intentionally destroyed the team. Because when Gordon got control of the Whalers, he immediately started making changes.
He, on both sides of the operation, started to put his own thumbprint.
One of Gordon's first decisions as owner was to replace the team's longtime general manager, a beloved and respected figure in Hartford. But that was just the beginning. Donna Elkinson was there, and she says Gordon's presence completely changed the atmosphere.
When Richard Gordon took over, it was a foreign country to me. It wasn't the family anymore, and the heart of the family was ripped right out of the entire office.
By March of 1991, Richard Gordon had owned the Whalers for 2.5 years, when the unthinkable happened.
I was in my office when I was told in a phone call that Ron Francis was traded. At first, I thought it was a very bad joke.
It wasn't. Ron Francis, the Golden Boy, one of the best players in NHL history, and Hartford's favorite son, was traded to Pittsburgh.
That was the dismantling of the team. I just couldn't believe it. I had a pit in my stomach that I just can't even describe.
When Whalers fans like Mark Anderson and Bob Muldoon heard this news, it was almost too much to handle.
I was heartbroken, absolutely positively devastated. I'm sure that I looked like I had lost my best friend.
It felt like a betrayal. He was our Ronnie, the face of the franchise.
Every fan base mourns when their favorite player gets traded. But in Hartford, this wasn't just a player. It was a neighbor, a community member, a friend. By this point, Howard Baldwin had moved to Los Angeles, but he was still keeping close tabs, and he was also confused.
What would motivate somebody to do something like that, which is like ripping the guts out of the team?
The day he was traded, that was the day that franchise died.
After the trade, Donna says that she pitched Gordon on a marketing idea centered around celebrating the Whalers' 20th anniversary, what the franchise had meant to so many.
And he just said, no, I don't want to build around mediocrity.
Instead, Gordon told her to market the new players that they had gotten in the trade for Ron Francis. Donna refused.
You can't rub something in the faces and the hearts of the fans.
And soon, Donna got fired. But less than a week after the trade, Ron Francis and his new team returned for a game in Hartford.
But tonight, it's Ronnie Francis' show.
Well, Ronnie Francis returning home. He'll be warmly welcomed.
Even though his jersey had changed, Whalers fans like Mark Anderson would never root against Ron Francis.
And I made damn sure I was going to that game. I said, I don't care what we have to do to get in, we're going to this game. And I'm in my Francis jersey, as was about maybe 7,500 other people that were there in the crowd that night.
That's what made Hartford different. They weren't rooting for a team. They were supporting their family. And Mark says the loudest cheer of the whole game was when Ron Francis had an assist for the other team.
Here's Bork with a pass to Francis to Recchi, shooting, and it's smothered. They score!
The place went absolutely bonkers. The fans were pissed. They were pissed.
But Richard Gordon wasn't even done yet.
So I go to opening night that following year. There's no Brass Bonanza. And everybody is going, where the hell's Brass Bonanza? Because it was ours.
The song that embodied the Hartford Whalers was replaced by a foghorn. But why? Boston Globe writer Christopher Price was also dumbfounded.
You trade their best player and the captain, and then you take away the song. It really feels like they were trying to actively alienate the fan base.
Gordon even altered the team's beloved logo, changing the color scheme.
You look at some of the decisions that they make, and they just left you, scratching your head. And you start to say, what are you doing here? What's the end game here with this franchise?
The Whalers had only one winning season during Gordon's time as owner. From 92 to 94, they were one of the worst teams in the whole league. And without the traditions and players they once loved, Howard Baldwin says it's no surprise that the support of Whalers fans dwindled.
Don't mess with the foundation of a team and the symbol of what everybody is attracted to. And they did that.
And in 1994, the Whalers were sold again First to an agency run by the state of Connecticut, and then to an out-of-towner named Peter Karmanos. He was from Detroit and had already tried to buy other teams in other markets. Karmanos declined to comment for this story, but it was clear to everyone in Hartford that he didn't have any connection to the city or the community. He constantly said that the team needed more fans and a larger market to survive. For him, the Whalers were just a way into the league.
Peter had his parachute on and had rigged it up to the pulley and was ready to jump. And that's sadly what happened.
Just 3 years later, in March of 1997,
bad news for hockey fans in Hartford, Connecticut.
The long battle to save the Hartford Whalers in Major League sports in Connecticut is over tonight.
As today, the Whalers announced officially that they will move at the end of this season after rejecting...
Their final game in the city would be a month later.
The Hartford Whalers have played 1,420 games in the National Hockey League. The last one is next on Sports Channel.
But lifelong fan Mark Anderson couldn't even go, refusing to support the team's owner.
I would not give him a penny. I sat at home alone with a box of Kleenex, and I watched the game, and I cried literally until I could not cry anymore.
In Los Angeles, Howard Baldwin couldn't even watch.
I knew how hard it was and how hard it would be to ever get it back. So I just said, I got to turn this off. But it also made me angry that people could take something that was so wonderful for so many people and just yank it out from under them.
For the last 2 decades, the arena MC had welcomed the Whalers onto the ice by saying,
"Here are your Hartford Whalers." Not the Hartford Whalers, your Hartford Whalers.
But at the start of this game,
he changed the script. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, here are the Hartford Whalers," because no longer were they ours.
So now they were going to be someone else's team? I just started crying, so I had to leave.
The Whalers won the game, and after it was over, the sold-out arena stood and cheered, tears streaming down their faces. The players skated circles around the rink, throwing their sticks and jerseys into the crowd.
The fans were all there. No one had left. No one wanted it to end.
The crowd won't leave. The players are sitting on the bench right now. They're going to sit on the bench and soak all of this in, led by the captain. I'm sure they don't know what to do. It's a situation.
The fans didn't want to leave, and neither did the players. And that, to me, just said, you can't replace this. It was just god-awful. Getting up the next morning was even worse because you just knew that they weren't going to be here. They'll be gone.
Donna couldn't even live in Hartford anymore, so she moved. And without the Whalers regularly drawing thousands of fans, Hartford crumbled.
The city just kind of fell apart. Stores suddenly were closing, and all of a sudden the restaurants weren't open. You couldn't even get a cup of coffee, but that's what it disintegrated into.
After the team left, the University of Hartford found that the Whalers had brought $73 million a year to the city's economy. Even Chuck's Steakhouse only lasted a few more years before it went out of business. But there was another loss, one that a study couldn't quantify: the emotional toll. The Whalers once gave Hartford something to be proud of, but now?
The entire city just looked like it had a cloud hanging over it.
All the respect that Hartford had garnered through the Whalers, well, it was now like, there, we told you so. You're just this crummy little city, and you deserve to lose your team.
It's been easy for fans to blame Karmanos. He's the one who actually moved the team. But Boston Globe writer Christopher Price says that by the time Karmanos got the team, there was little he could do. The damage had already been done by Richard Gordon.
It was just a constant series of wrong decisions. Every time they came to a fork in the road, they took the wrong path.
Gordon ripped out the heart of the Whalers and alienated the fans. It was so blatant, so complete, that blogger Jeremiah Ruffini had wondered if he might have done it on purpose. And Donna Elkinson also has long, unanswered questions for Gordon.
I'd really like to know if he could do it again. Would he? And would he do it the same way? Or what would he change?
After talking to so many who loved the Whalers, who were there when the team was thriving, I had those same questions. But to get answers, I needed to talk to Richard Gordon directly. I had been trying to get in touch with him for months, but calls to the numbers I found listed for his various residences usually ended up sounding like this. But I owed it to Whalers fans to try harder. And so, I did.
Hi, you've reached the Newport Country Club. Unfortunately, no one is available to take your phone call right now. If you would like,
I had heard that Richard Gordon spent a lot of his time golfing at an exclusive country club in Rhode Island. So I figured, why not?
My name is Ben Baskin. I am trying to leave a message for one of the members of your club. A little bit of a weird request, but if you get this...
That didn't lead anywhere. But then I found that I had mutual connections with one of Gordon's neighbors. So I tried him.
Please leave your name and number. We'll return your call as soon as possible. Thanks for calling.
My name is Ben Baskin. I'm really sorry to be bothering you, but I believe you were...
That message did lead to a call back and an email address. And then, a few days later...
Mr. Gordon.
How are you? I'm sorry you haven't been able to get to me. Yeah, normally everybody...
When I told Richard Gordon what I was working on, I fully expected that he'd turn me down. But instead, he agreed to an interview. He knows that some fans blame him for what happened to the Whalers. And it seemed that maybe, after all these years, he was ready to set the record straight.
It's a constant stress. You know, it's kind of interesting when you read the newspaper after you're lost, it's like you tried to lose. I mean, nobody wants to lose, but that's just life.
So why did you want to be a part of buying the team?
It was fun. It was interesting. It was a new venue for me. It was important to the community, and it was important to real estate investments in downtown Hartford. The stronger the downtown is, the stronger your real estate investments are.
From his time in Hartford real estate, Gordon says he understood how much the Whalers meant to the city. But just like he had told Donna, he didn't want to celebrate mediocrity.
Look at the record, and it had always been 500. Forever 500, the Whalers. So you said, okay, what can we do to elevate it beyond that?
When he bought the Whalers in 1988, Gordon had been successful in everything he had done up to that point, and he had no reason to think that this would be any different. But he told me that at that time, the NHL was changing. It was becoming big business. Cities were building new luxury arenas, players were getting bigger contracts, and teams had to raise ticket prices to premiums that Gordon believed fans in Hartford wouldn't pay. And the NHL was looking to expand.
The league really had little interest in small markets. They put up with it, but in order to expand the game, you need big markets.
So Gordon says there were financial reasons behind many of his decisions, like the trade of Ron Francis, at least in part. At the time, Francis was a superstar and was due to get a much larger contract. But negotiations stalled. And one day, Gordon says his new general manager came to him with a trade possibility that the GM claimed would make the team better. Gordon agreed to it, but he now says that it
probably was the worst trade in the history of hockey.
Are you thinking about fan reactions of like how Hartford's going to respond to this?
I mean, if you won the Stanley Cup, would anybody complain about it?
Hartford probably still would have. Gordon still doesn't seem to understand that Francis meant more to the city than just being a great hockey player. And of course, they didn't win the Stanley Cup. Without Francis, the team collapsed. But again, Gordon says it was impossible for a small market city like Hartford to keep up with the changing league. He insists that he didn't buy the Whalers to make money, but to help Hartford, and in turn help his real estate business. He claims he would have been happy losing $1 million a year.
So the question is, how much do you really want to lose? Do you want to lose $20 million a year? 15? 30? How much do you want to lose?
Even if they sold out every Whalers game, Gordon maintains that he'd have lost $10 million a year.
I don't think there's anything anybody could do to keep it in Hartford. Nothing.
Of course, fans would dispute that, believing that if he hadn't dismantled the team and alienated the city, things would have been different. But it's easy to spend other people's money.
I realized how much money you could lose in the future, and I said, that's not acceptable. When it starts risking your family losing that kind of money, that's not time to stay in.
Gordon told me that when he decided that his family couldn't take any more financial losses, he sold the team to the Connecticut Development Authority instead of another individual owner, because Gordon says that he trusted the state to be able to keep the team in Hartford. He says he never would have moved the Whalers.
Why not?
Because it's Hartford. It belongs there.
But instead, the state sold the team to Karmanos, which Gordon says he never would have done. And because the team was a shell of what it once was, of course Hartford still did lose the Whalers. I wondered if Gordon felt responsible for the decisions made during his time as owner, if he had regrets.
Do you consider yourself at fault?
No question. I take total responsibility for it because I'm the one that has to make those decisions. So, you feel it's an embarrassment, really. You have an obligation to the fans and the community, and you've let them down. And if I were to do it over again, I would do it a lot differently.
But Gordon says there was no malice behind any of this, no sinister plot, just ignorance. He says he trusted the wrong people, like the general manager he hired, who immediately demanded that they get rid of Brass Bonanza. Gordon says he loved the song, but he allowed the change, not fully grasping how big a decision that would be.
I didn't really understand the dynamics of sports as I do business.
After talking to him, I realized that Gordon just didn't know how to run a sports team, especially not a team like the Whalers, where their success wasn't really the point. The Whalers were a family, and Gordon says he now understands just how much he hurt that family.
Probably the best fans of any city. The fans couldn't be any better. That's the thing that's most difficult. I think you can see how much they meant by how much they're missed.
I do believe that Richard Gordon had good intentions when he bought the Whalers, but he was placed in a really tricky financial situation in Hartford in the 90s, and was simply in over his head. And when I talked to Howard Baldwin, the team's original owner, about Gordon's tenure, he sort of understands.
And Richard, I think he tried. He really did try, but he just didn't get it. And he didn't get the community that he really lived in.
Over a decade after the team was moved to North Carolina and renamed the Hurricanes, Baldwin tried to bring the Whalers back.
We just figured, gosh, if anybody can do it, we can. And we couldn't.
Hartford had changed. This time, the city's politicians and corporations didn't see his dream and didn't help him achieve it.
The city and the state were mere shadows of what was there when we were there. They'd lost their ability to dream.
Sports are different now. No longer can a man with a few bucks and a dream manifest a professional team. And Boston Globe writer Christopher Price says that in a lot of ways, no longer can a team like the Hartford Whalers exist.
Ultimately, the legacy of the Hartford Whalers and hockey in Hartford in general is tied up in community, is tied up in the relationship between the fans and the players and the team. And I don't know if we have that anymore in professional sports.
As professional sports have gotten bigger and bigger, growing from an industry that deals in millions of dollars to billions, the kind of connection that Hartford had with their Whalers has become impossible to replicate. Fans don't know the players. They don't see them at the grocery store, can't share a beer with them after a game. And in many ways, that's why the Hartford Whalers and its logo still live on.
In New England, there's something about that W and that H that still hits people in that nostalgic sweet spot. For me, they were the perfect team at the perfect time.
For Price and so many others, that's what the Whalers and that logo represent. It still captures a moment in time when anything was possible, when an underdog city could come together, could have hope and pride.
It was a magical 22 years where this ugly misfit of a city was able to shed its inferiority complex and flower.
For Bob Muldoon, the Whalers are still more than just a team. It's why he wrote a novel about them a decade after they left, and why even just talking about the song Brass Bonanza still makes him cry.
You get emotional sometimes because, that song takes you back to a period of time when life was filled with so much possibilities.
Years after the team left, lifelong fan Mark Anderson joined the Hartford Whalers Booster Club. The club still has active members and still meets monthly. Their mission now is to ensure that the Whalers don't just become a forgotten footnote in hockey history.
What we do as a club is we try to keep the spirit and the memory of the Whalers alive.
But maybe the Whalers staying alive is more about keeping that idea alive. That with sports, anything can be possible. And the Whalers still connect Hartford, still bring the community together. For Donna Elkinson, that was never more evident than when she hired a painter to work on her house.
All of a sudden, I turned around. There are tears rolling down his face. He was looking at the Hartford Whaler Frisbee I had hanging on a nail in the garage. And he said, "Where did you get that?"
The painter used to go to Whalers games with his dad, and he told Donna about the car rides they took to the Civic Center when they bonded over their team.
I mean, the guy was crying in my garage because he saw the Frisbee with the Hartford Whaler logo on it. Everybody has a story, everybody.
And so the two strangers stood in that garage, sharing their stories and reminiscing about the Whalers. Not just about what they once meant to Hartford, but what they still do. On the next episode of Lost in Sports.
It's not like a little movie. It's a pretty big movie. It just disappeared. That doesn't even seem possible.
I felt like we made an unreleased classic, and that movie never got seen. And that's extraordinary.
This episode was written and reported by me, Ben Baskin. Our senior producer is Kate McAuliffe. Iggy Manda is our production assistant, with production support from Devin Manzi and Megan Coyle. Tommy Bazarian from PRX Productions is our engineer. This episode was edited by Jessica Popovac. Fact-checking done by Jane Ackerman. Our theme song was composed by Michael Kramer. Our executive producers are Gotham Chopra, Amith Sankaran, and Adam Schlossman. Special thanks to Karen Baldwin, Chris Berman, Peter DeMalley, Kevin Deneen, Ron Francis, Peter Good, Matt Green, Mark Howe, Chuck Caton, Pat Pickens, and Joel Quenville. Lost in Sports is a production of Religion of Sports and PRX. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend, tell your chiropractor, tell your mother, and then do me a favor and leave us a review and click follow. And if you have your own sports mysteries you want me to solve, text me or leave me a voicemail at 914-893-2870 or email me at lostinsports@religionofsports.com.
Da 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 da
Da da da da da da.
Da 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 da.
Da 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 da.
I just gives you goosebumps.
From all of us on the Lost in Sports team and the larger ROS family, I wanted to take a moment to thank our launch sponsors, Odoo, Progressive, DraftKings, and BetterHelp Online Counseling, for supporting the show and its creators.
From PRX.